Assalamu alaikum. So today we're gonna look at how to add blur to two different subjects in Final Cut Pro at the same time, but the subjects being at a different spatial position. So we're gonna look at two different methods to do to do this. One is going to be splitting the long video into smaller clips, and another method is without splitting. So at first we're gonna look at how to achieve this without splitting, and then we're gonna look at how we can do with splitting. So now we're gonna bring the Gaussian blur from effects. If the effects is not present, we have to click on this button and go to blur, then Gaussian blur. We're gonna drag and drop it onto the clip. So first it's gonna automatically bring a magnetic mask. We're not gonna use that, so we're gonna delete the mask. Now we will add a shape mask. So we'll click on this button and add. So it will bring a circular shape mask. So I'll explain what the buttons do. So the four green buttons are used to adjust the dimensions. The top and bottom buttons can be used to adjust the height, and the left and right buttons can be used to adjust the width. So the white button determines how much square or circular the shape mask will be. So we can adjust that according to our need. So the outer box can also be adjusted by moving the cursor towards the outer box, and when it turns white we can drag it down so that it shrinks, such that the outer effect of the blur is minimal and the blur is focused. So now I'll adjust such that it's only on the card. So as you can see, the blur is effective, but the problem is the blur is gonna appear on all the sections of the video, but we don't want that. We just want at this particular part. So you'll be able to see that there is a button just right to amount, so it's called a keyframe. So we're gonna click on it, but before that we are going to move at the point where we want to start the blur, and then we're gonna click on the keyframe button. So as we want to start from the first, so we're gonna move at the first and then at keyframe. Now we're gonna move the cursor to where we want to stop and add a keyframe there, but we're not gonna set 0 there. We're gonna keep this amount same. This is because if we set 0 here, then the amount is going to gradually decrease from 50 to 0, which is not going to bring us any benefit. So right now I set at 0 and showed you guys that it's decreasing over the time, so at the end the grid card is visible. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna add a keyframe before the 0 with the same intensity, and then just after that we're gonna add another keyframe with 0. So now you'll be able to see that instead of gradually, it's going to stay blurred and then become unblurred at the next scene where we don't have any sensitive information. Now if we look at the scene at the very end, there are two grid cards that we want to hide, but if we only add another mask, it's not gonna help, and I'll show you right in a second what happens when you just add simply another shape mask. So as you can see that I'm adding another mask, so I'll adjust it such that it's above the other card. So now So if we go to the beginning of the clip, we're gonna see that it's blurring the at the space where I added the new space mask, sorry, shape mask, but it's not blurring at the point where I intended it to, because the keyframes are of the amount is taking effect here. So there is no benefit of adding a shape mask in the same Gaussian blur. Instead, we have to add another Gaussian blur. Then we're going to remove the mask, magnetic mask again. So we're going to change the name for the ease of remembering and editing it again. So now we're going to add the shape mask. So we're going to adjust it and make it such that it's directly on the card. Now we're going to add another one. So as you can see, the blur is appearing all over the place, but we don't want that. We just want it at a specific place. So like I said, for the first one, we're going to add a keyframe first with 0. Then we're going to add another keyframe with 50 just after that, 50 or any amount you want right there. So we're going to add the new keyframe, increase the intensity, and now see, the blur only appears where we want it. So now we have to also add a keyframe where we want the blur to end. So for this, first of all, we're going to add a keyframe with the intensity that we have already set, and another keyframe with intensity 0 just after that, so that there is no gradual decrease and the censored information stays censored. So now we'll see that the blur appears where we want it to be, and then it perfectly ends where we don't want it to be. So that method worked on both as we wanted it to appear together. But what if we wanted to them to appear at like get blurred at separate times, right? So that will be helpful if, you know, like you are working on a video where something else is appearing in the frame at a different time or going away at a different time, then you might need to differentiate those. So we can't use the same method. We have to add another Gaussian blur. So we're gonna remove the mask and add a shape mask, and then go to the time frame we want that to appear, adjust according to our needs. So we're going to add the time frame keyframe as I previously mentioned in the specific way that I mentioned. First we're gonna add the amount to 0, then we are going to add 0 again, and then we're going to add right after the 0 the increased intensity keyframe, and then we're going to keep it to the portion that we want to keep it blurred. Then we're going to add the keyframe there with the same intensity, and just after that another keyframe with 0. So now I'll show you how it looks. So this is the first blur we did. So no blur in the second clip where we don't want any blur. There is nothing to censor. And now in the final, the first card is going to get blurred first, and then the second card gets blurred, and then it gets unblurred first, and the first card gets unblurred later. So we can use the keyframe principle that I just showed you for any scenario to blur with the most flexibility according to your needs. So now we're going to see how to do by splitting the long clip into shorter clips. This is a very easy way. So first we're going to go to the point where we want to stop the blur, and then press Command B to split the clip. So we're going to also split at between the second and third. Now what we're going to do is drag another Gaussian blur, but now what it's going to do is it's going to apply only on the clip that we release it on. So we're going to release it on the first clip and add a shape mask, also rename so that we can remember. So if we click on the second clip, you will see that the Gaussian blur we just applied on the first is not going to appear on the second. So this is why using the split method is easier. You can manage the Gaussian blurs independently, so that, and if there are only one things to blur at every scene that you want to blur, so you don't have to go to the complicated process of keyframes, adding multiple keyframes. Just you have to blur the object and it will stay blurred, so it won't be a problem. So the blur is appearing for the whole clip, but if you wanna change like where the blur appears at different times in the same clip, then you can use keyframe technique as I showed you earlier to achieve that. So now look at, if I wanted to make the blur go away at an earlier time, what I would have done, I would have used keyframes. So now we're going to add the blur in the third scene. So first drop the Gaussian blur. So as you can see, the magnetic mask is very nice and it easily detects object. But today for this tutorial we're just gonna use shape mask, but that's a very important feature to detect faces throughout the video. So we're gonna delete that for now and add a shape mask. So we'll also add for the second card now. Adjust it. So as we can see, the blur will now only appear for the third scene and not in the second scene. And if we want the blur to appear at different times, we just have to use the keyframe technique. So thank you for watching this video. I hope I was able to help you.